And Jed, take it away.
All right, good morning, good morning. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Gail. As always, thank you to all of you, our loyal members that have been with us throughout this crazy time. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed all of our virtual experiences we've been bringing over the last 5 months, and we do plan on continuing them. We're not sure how long, but since we are still at a limited capacity here at the zoo, we wanted to continue a couple of these just to kind of keep you guys connected with what's going on here at the zoo. So as you can tell, and as I said, I'm wearing a mask today because I am out in the main public area and we are open to the public. Yay! So we are open back up, which is great. Now we are at a limited capacity and we are asking everyone to reserve a ticket before you get to the zoo. That helps us to limit the amount of people that are coming into the zoo. So you do need to reserve a ticket. If you are a member, of course, yeah, use your membership number and that ticket will be free. So there's no cost to you as a zoo member, but you do need to reserve a spot because one of the things in our guidelines is keeping the numbers down to maintain that social distancing that we want to have inside the zoo to protect not only you guys, but also our staff and some of our more vulnerable animals that are susceptible to the COVID-19. So you will see a lot of things when you come into the zoo, banners asking to maintain social distancing, and there are some additional barriers on those animals that are vulnerable to potentially getting COVID-19. So those are going to be our primates, our otters, some of our cat species. And so, there are definitely some guidelines. And one of the big things is make sure you bring water. Bring a water bottle. It's hot out here. We have shut down the drinking fountains. Again, all of our high touch zones, things that you have to touch to activate, we've shut those down to decrease any sort of pathogen transfer. So, but make sure you guys get your tickets now, reserve them because I know a lot of, I think the next week is already sold out. So if you want to come into the zoo to say hi to some of your favorite animals, definitely that's the way to do it. We will still be doing these. I'm thinking we haven't picked next week's Wednesday virtual member chat yet, but I'm thinking sneak peek. All right, I haven't even told Emily. I'm thinking giraffe. So we haven't done the giraffe yet, so I'm thinking giraffe. We'll be out on the giraffe platform. We're going to be able to get up close to them and give them some food, and you guys get to see some of their amazing adaptations. So stay tuned for that. Once we do officially pick that animal, Emily will put that out to all you guys, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be giraffe. We have not done that yet, and there's such an amazing animal we have here at the zoo. So yes, that'll be fun. Thanks, Jennifer. So you guys will have to tune in next Wednesday for giraffe. But today we are here to talk about our grizzly bears. This is our only one of our only North American animals we have here at the zoo. We do have our alligator, North American alligator. The grizzly bears came to us in 2013, 2014. They were born in 2012, and that makes them almost 8 years old. So we have an estimated birth date of January 10th, 2012 for them. So this January, that would put them at 8 years old. And we do have two grizzly bears. We have a brother-sister. We have Ronan and Finley. And so I think we are ready to let them out of their other habitat. We have two habitats for our grizzly bears. We have what we call our mulch yard, which is on the east side of our habitat, and then our pool yard, which is on the west side of our habitat. And so currently they have been on the mulch yard. I am on the pool yard. We're going to flip around this camera, and they're going to be coming out to the left here. There's a door that's going to open up. I don't want to move the camera because it gets a little finicky when I move it. We did just get this brand new camera that was donated to us, and I'm hoping you guys enjoy the clarity of this camera because I think it's one, I'm able to zoom in to get you guys a better view, and then the clarity hopefully is much clearer for you guys. So we have Ronan and Finley. Ronan is the one that's a little bit closer to us, so he is our boy, so he's kind of standing on all fours, and then Finley's in the back. She's standing on her 2 feet. She just came down. So that's Finley in the back right there. That's, again, a brother-sister. And we did have both of them come in at the same time. Now, Ronan has been castrated, so he is neutered. This is not a breeding pair. One, it's a brother-sister, and also there is not an SSP, a species survival plan, breeding program for grizzly bears. So grizzly bears, people get very confused on what is a grizzly bear. So grizzly bears are brown bears. Now, all grizzly bears are brown bears, but not all brown bears are grizzly bears. Okay, so all grizzly bears are brown bears. Not all brown bears are grizzly bears. Within the brown bears, there are several different subspecies that we can see and we can find and that inhabit different parts of the world. So in the lower 48 in the United States and North America, we have our grizzly bears that you can see in Wyoming, in Idaho, in Montana. There's a very small population of grizzly bears. Once we get more north, we start seeing more Kodiak bears. Those are the bears that we'll see on the coastal lines. Those are not grizzly bears. They are brown bears, but again, a different subspecies. Okay, so it's kind of confusing on who is who and what is what. And, you know, if you look at the genealogy of them, genetically, they're all very, very similar. Okay, so if we were to look at, you know, their DNA compared to each other, they're all very, very similar, but they do have differences in their habitat that they range in some of their adaptations, their size for sure, their colorations depending on where they are. And so because of that, we have those different subspecies. Now, across the world, we have 8 different species of bears. Okay, there's 8 different species of bears. There are 3 that inhabit North America. Those are our brown bear, our black bear, and our polar bear. Those are our 3 that inhabit North America. There is 1 that is down in South America. That is the Andean bear. So we went over Andean bear, I think a couple weeks ago. We saw Worf and Oha. And then we have our panda bears. We have our sloth bears. We have our sun bear and our Asiatic black bear. So those are the 8 different species of bears. Now, of course, within those, we do see some subspecies, especially with the brown bears. So what we are looking at right now is grizzly bears. So these guys can get upwards of around 700 to 800 pounds, the males, and the females around 500 to 600 pounds when they're in kind of their winter weight. The fluctuation the bears have, some bears have in hibernation mode, going into hibernation mode, is very different from their lean months, their summer months, when of course they're going to be coming out of hibernation. They have used up all those fat supplies to get through the long winter, and they're much more lean. So these guys can fluctuate, you know, sometimes 200 to 300 pounds, depending on the size of the animal. So Ronan right now is sitting at about 640, 650 pounds, and Finley is sitting at about 460 pounds. Okay, so that's kind of their more lean weight. Ronan, Kelly, our zookeeper, said he can get close to 800 pounds as we're getting into winter. Now, do grizzly bears hibernate here at our zoo? No, they do not. And it's kind of a back and forth between animal care professionals on whether or not the animals need to hibernate to maintain a good metabolism, good mental health. The challenge in a zoological facility is to create the exact conditions for those animals to hibernate. We know here in Tucson, we do not have cold winters. We may think it's cold when it gets 30 degrees. I think it's cold, but that's not considered a cold winter, and it's not considered a ideal temperature for these animals to go into that hibernation mode. Now, during our winter season, as we start getting cooler, they will put on a little bit more weight. They will get their winter coat, so their coat does change, and they will become a little bit more lethargic. So we do reduce the feed. We will not feed them the same throughout the entire year. They get fed differently depending on the season. And so we will see kind of a quasi-hibernation, but these guys are not going to sleep for a period of time and a period of inactivity, and then us not feeding and giving them water, and then them coming out during our springtime. And they don't need that. So here in a zoological facility, we have the ability to care for them throughout the entire year and give them everything they need. Now, a lot of people ask, well, how do you get your animals? That's a big question we get. How did you get this animal? How did you get that animal? And during our virtual chats, we've talked a lot about breeding programs. So we've talked about how these animals are paired up. We saw Penzi, our 5-month-old elephant calf, who is the offspring of Samba and Mabu, our mother and father. And those animals had a breeding recommendation for that reproduction so that we have offspring. So not all animals we have here have breeding recommendations. Remember, for every species, there is a species survival plan. And in that plan, we look at the genetics of all the animals. We will shift animals from one zoo to the other for breeding companionship, or if one individual has maybe unrepresented bloodline, that would be a high value for that individual to bring in to a zoo. Now, some animals do not have breeding recommendations. Some species do not have breeding recommendations. The grizzly bear is one of those. And grizzly bears are considered endangered. So most animals we get from other zoos. Some animals we do bring in from the wild. So why would we bring an animal in from the wild? It's not like we just go there and we go into the den of the mom and we pluck grizzly bear cubs out of there and we take them into our zoo. That's not a reason why we would bring them in. There's a few different reasons. One, if that animal was injured beyond release because of human causes. So say a grizzly bear gets caught or gets hit by a car, breaks a leg, and would never be able to survive in the wild, we would try to find a home for it. If that animal was orphaned because of human causes, so say mom grizzly bear gets hit by a car, there's cubs there that are killed, that mom's killed, cubs would not survive without mom, we would try to bring them in and find them a home. Most often though, it's because the animal was sentenced to death, because they were going to be euthanized, because they were going to be cold, because of what we call a human-animal conflict. Now, we call it a human-animal conflict. I call it just a human conflict. And that was the result of why we have Ronan and Finley. Ronan and Finley were brought in from the Flathead Indian Reservation in Idaho, where we do have grizzly bears, a small number of grizzly bears. And they were brought in because their mom was teaching them bad habits. Now, their mom was teaching them bad habits, but really it was humans that were allowing that female, that sow, to exhibit those behaviors because they were feeding her. So they were putting food out for her. And of course, grizzly bears are extremely intelligent. They're going to realize really quickly that this is a great food source, and they're going to be able to go out and capitalize on that. And then, you know, when the tourists leave, well, they're going to seek out what gave them that good source of food. And that, of course, is humans. So now they're invading grain silos, chicken coops, going into houses. They become a nuisance animal. Fish and Wildlife Services relocated mom and cubs just to have them come back to the exact same area. At that point, they're deemed a threat to human life, and they are either euthanized or they are relocated to a different area like a zoological facility. So we had been anticipating orphan grizzly bears when we redesigned this habitat. We knew that this was a problem and we wanted to help out. We wanted to be a home for orphan grizzly bears. One, to be able to tell that story, and two, to be able to save some cubs' lives that would have been euthanized of no fault of their own. And so the call came in that Ronan and Finley, they and their mom, they had caught. And we said, we want all of them. Unfortunately, Fish and Wildlife Services euthanized the mom. They said that she was too aggressive and would not be successful in a zoological facility. And we were able to bring in Ronan and Finley. So I tell this story not as a doom and gloom. I tell this story because this is the reality. This is what these animals face on a daily basis. And it's directly the cause of us. And so what can we do? What does Ronan and Finley represent now? Well, they represent an opportunity for change. They represent an opportunity for us to learn about what this problem is. Because how can we be part of a solution if we don't know what the problem is. And so Ronan and Finley are here as ambassadors to grizzly bears and to all brown bears to let us know that there's a problem. And by learning what the problem is, well, now we can be part of the solution. So what is the solution? Well, we don't have grizzly bears here in Arizona, but we do have black bears. We do have other wildlife, and those wildlife face the same threats that grizzly bears face in Yellowstone, in Wyoming, in Idaho and Montana, even up in Alaska. And that's when humans come into a habitat, into a territory of a species, we have to be cognizant of what we're doing. One of the biggest things that we can do is don't feed the animals. Don't put food out for the animals. If you do that, you are teaching those animals that this is a place to get food. So if we're feeding bears, if we're leaving garbage out while we're walking on a trail, those animals are going to come in contact with that. They are either going to then search out humans for more food, or they're going to go into houses because they smell that food that was really good, that high fat, high calorie, potentially chocolate, whatever it is. The other thing that we have to realize is be smart, be bear aware. Be bear aware when you're out there. So know what animals are around your area, your environment that you're going to be in, so that we can make sure that we are safe. Okay, so grizzly bears are a large predatory species, and they don't search out humans for food. But if you go walking up to a grizzly bear thinking that you're going to cuddle with it, that's going to be a poor interaction for you, and you're going to end up injured. And if you end up injured because of the grizzly bear, guess what happens? The grizzly bear ends up being put down. So we need to make sure that we are bear aware, because yes, this is an endangered species. There is not a lot of brown bears left on the planet, and there's even fewer grizzly bears of those subspecies. And this is really a keystone species. This is a top predator in the environment that they're in, and that's because they are omnivorous. So they will be eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, but they will also go after large prey like deer, like elk. And that keeps down on those numbers of that prey species. It's important for us to have those apex predators at the top, because they really regulate all the other prey species below. Sorry, I got a plane flying over. There we go. So without those apex predators, those prey species go unchecked, and they can devastate an ecosystem and basically sentence all the other animals to have to either move or not be able to survive because they don't have the resources there. So apex predators are extremely important to the success of a healthy habitat. Grizzly bears are extremely intelligent. They are built to be able to move and lift large logs. They have great claws, huge claws, about 3 inches in length, that they can use to strip flesh if they need to from the prey species, or be able to rip open dead logs to get to insects, termites, bugs, any of those type of things. It's an extremely powerful animal, and they're very inventive. So what you're seeing out here is Kelly and Ashley, our two zookeepers, put out a lot of enrichment, and we've talked about enrichment, and that's basically anything that changes up the day-to-day life of our animals. And so what we want to do is challenge them. Now, enrichment changes depending on what species we're working with. If we're looking at an ostrich, that enrichment is going to be very different than that of a grizzly bear. Grizzly bears are highly intelligent animals that are really good at solving problems. And so we will give them a lot of puzzle feeders. You can actually see an ice treat in the back there that Finley is eating that's hanging. So it actually moves. It's on a little bit of a bungee cord. So it's not just sitting on the ground easy for her to get. She actually has to use her claws to stabilize that and use her muscles. So not only is this physically challenging, but it's also mentally challenging. And when we do that, when we can challenge our animals with enrichment, we can see successful behavior. Because you have to remember, in the wild, these animals are challenged every day. Nobody is giving them a plate of food, except for humans that are doing bad things, to just feed off of. These guys in the wild, they have to search for their food. They have to find it. They have to figure out how do they get it. They have to run after a prey. They have to bring that prey down. So they have challenges in the wild. We try to challenge them here. So Ronan and Finley are amazing ambassadors for us, again, that teach us to be bear aware. And that goes for all species out there, the environment that you're in. And if we can do that, we can change the tide on these animals and the survival of them. Let me see if I can get Finley standing up here. Hang on. There we go. That's a little better. So we all are challenged now to help be bear aware and help make sure that we are being good stewards of our environment when we are out doing hiking, doing camping, looking at wildlife. They're amazing to go out. We want to see these guys in their natural settings, but we have to make sure that we are doing the right thing. So with that, I've given you guys a little synopsis of what's going on with our grizzly bears. Emily, I know that we've had some questions come through. Is there anything that I can answer?
Yeah, we've definitely had a few questions. So this was previously a habitat for different species. What did we do to kind of make it more habitable for the grizzlies?
Yeah, so we used to, historically, we've had polar bears in this habitat. Back 15 years ago, I actually worked with Boris, our male, and Kobe, our female polar bear. And when the polar bears, one of them passed away, one of them moved to a different facility, we decided that polar bears, although an amazing species with a great story surrounded by climate change, was a little bit challenging here in Tucson to be able to tell that story because of where their native climate is. And although the polar bears did well here because they're a desert bear, they live on the tundra, which is a desert. We get more rainfall here than the tundra does. It was still a very challenging story to tell. So we looked at this as a good habitat for a bear, and decided on, well, do we want to bring in black bears? Do we want to bring in grizzly bears? And again, the story with the grizzly bears was, there's about 20 or 30 grizzly bears every year that are euthanized because of that conflict. And we decided that we really wanted to save a couple of those species and help tell their story. And so to do that, we wanted to do some renovations. Polar bears are great swimmers, and so they're able to get right in the pool and get right out. Grizzly bears can swim, but they don't swim that well. And so what we had to do is we had to put a couple ledges. I don't know. Let me see if I can move this camera without it disconnecting. Sometimes if I move the camera too much, it disconnects. So you can see a couple of those ledges down there that we actually had to add for right there, so that they had a little platform to be able to get up on. There's actually one right below me as well. And you can see Ronan over there. He's licking some peanut butter off the wall right over the river. And then one of the other things that we did was we put a hole through the wall that used to not be there, and created both habitats that they could use at the same time. Before, they weren't able to, the polar bears weren't able to go from one habitat to the other. They were only able to be in one side. So by doing this, we've doubled the space and created a little waterfall. And again, grizzly bears do spend time in water, but typically don't swim a whole bunch. So we wanted to create those shallow areas for them to be in. And then we also added a lot of things that grizzly bears are going to interact with more than polar bears. Polar bears like to pounce on stuff. Grizzly bears like to get up on their hind legs and manipulate stuff. So you can see that toy right there is that enrichment item is hanging from an eye bolt. So we installed a bunch of these eye bolts so we could hang a bunch of stuff from and allow the grizzly bear to, again, use that natural ability that they have to be able to stand on those hind ends. Where the polar bears, we had a lot of ground stuff because they like to pounce on things. So we didn't alter it too much, but those alterations were critical to, again, allow the bears to have more space and the visitors to have better opportunity to be able to get up close and connect with our bears.
What is the average lifespan of a grizzly bear?
So grizzly bears, if they, can get to an old age, they can live upwards into their 30s and 40s. So, the median life expectancy, I think, is right around 25, 30 years old. And these guys are 8 years old. So, they're kind of in their prime right now. Ronan out there would be considered, a fairly dominant male bear at this point, and juvenile bears would probably stay clear of him at his size and at his age.
What kind of meats do we feed our grizzlies, and do we provide a variety, or do we feed them anything that's like insect chow? What does their average diet look like?
So what is their diet? Well, you guys are fortunate enough, I could kind of guess at their diet, but I have Kelly, who's our zookeeper right here. And so Kelly can actually tell us what we feed them and how much we feed them. So this is Kelly, one of our grizzly bear keepers. And Kelly, the question is, what are we feeding our grizzly bears? What type of meat do we feed them? Do we have a variety? And what type of other chow are we putting in there?
So we actually just redid their diet. They were getting a very similar diet every single day, and now they get a lot more variation. So they get a whole case of romaine. So it's 24 heads of romaine, 10 heads of celery every day. They get about 5 pounds or 10 pounds of their chow every single day. And it's a mix of a bear maintenance chow and kind of a fishy flavored dog food, just to give us a little bit of a variation in what we can put in our toys and kind of spread it out, different size chows go better in smaller toys than bigger toys. And then they also get a veggie that rotates through. So they do carrots, sweet potatoes, apples, pears, and they rotate through that. And then every day they get a large meat item. Today it happens to be salmon. Yesterday they got rabbits. Tomorrow they will get ground diet. They'll get oxtails on Friday. And then we kind of rotate back through, and they get a lot of other fish and meat, and they get bones 3 times a week to kind of help keep their teeth clean and that jaw strength to kind of break open those bones.
Yeah, so as omnivores, of course, they're going to get a variety, and I mean, that's a huge variety of meat, from the fish to the small mammals, and then to our, what we call carnivore meat, which we feed to our lions, to our jaguars, to several other of our carnivorous species. So again, a really well-balanced diet. And Kelly, since I have you here, we talked about weights, and one of the key things, hang on, we got a plane flying over. I'm gonna let that fly over. You guys enjoy watching grizzly bears eat ice treats? Okay, so one of the key components to diets is, of course, weights. And you guys weigh our bears to see, do you need to change? You just said that you changed the diet. Why did we change the diet?
So we changed it just for more variety. These guys are very, very busy bears. We like to keep them busy in the wild. They'd be foraging most of the day. So with the change in their diet and going to more chow in their diet, we're able to kind of put those in puzzle feeders and make them work harder, make them forage longer for their food. And we weigh these guys every 2 weeks. So this is our first year on our new diet, so it's kind of a learning curve for all of us. We're making sure that they're staying in good weight ranges like they have in the past. So we're kind of alternating what they're getting. We increase their greens to keep them a little bit fuller, but not give them a bunch of extra calories. And they've been doing really great on the new diet.
So big question is, how do you weigh a grizzly bear?
So we have a very large wood platform, and that goes into the night house space. We do it all in the back area. And then we have little feet that connect to the brains of the scale, and those go inside that box. And then the grizzly bears, they come over to us and they sit down on the box, and we give them parts of their diet. Normally we use their fish or their peanuts when we weigh them. So they get good snacks for just sitting on the scale. And then we kind of alternate. So Ronan normally goes first, and then Finley will go right after him. And we have two keepers, one feeding the bear that's not being weighed and one feeding the bear that is being weighed.
And remember, we've talked about our training using positive reinforcement and protective contact. So this is considered a powerful animal. And so we do not go into the same space at the same time with this animal. So all of that training is done through a barrier with positive reinforcement. So it's all a choice-based training on the animal side. They get to choose if they want to work with Kelly or if they don't. And so it's really the relationship that she has and the good treats that's going to allow her to assess these different elements that allow us to care for them. So not only do we get weights on them, we can also ask them to position themselves for vaccines. We can ask them to stand so we can see their paws. If we needed to do a nail trim, we could do a nail trim. If we needed to give any sorts of shots, we have the ability to do that. Are these guys trained to open their mouth?
We're working on it.
Okay, so
Finley has it. Ronan's kind of a work in progress.
So one of the behaviors, and it's a challenging one, because again, think about trying to train, if you have a dog or a cat or a horse or whatever it is, think about trying to train that animal to open their mouth without ever touching them. All right, just try to think about how you would go about doing that. And so that's the language, the training language that's created between our keepers, our trainers, and those animals. And when you can develop that, then you're able to obtain those different behaviors. But asking an animal to open their mouth and then having them realize that's what you want them to do is a good trainer to be able to do that, and an animal that really is in sync. And so by doing that, we can look and see, well, do we need to immobilize this animal to do dental work? Well, if we were able to have the vet come down there and look at the teeth and their dentition looks great, well, we don't have to. But if there is an issue, and maybe Kelly is seeing that, Finley's only eating on one side of her mouth, that could allude her to, we could have some sort of a mouth problem, a tooth problem. Well, now let's open her mouth and let's take a look, and we can see what we're getting into before we actually get into the veterinary center. So those behaviors that we have are really key for being able to care for them. And these guys are smart cookies. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they're constantly trying to think about what's going on. So, all right, Emily, do you have any other questions? Especially now that I have Kelly right here.
Yeah, definitely. So you did mention like vaccines and stuff. Are any of our grizzlies vulnerable to valley fever?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, almost all species are vulnerable to valley fever. We've found valley fever in, again, almost all species. Bears are susceptible, especially with their big, long snouts. That's one of their best adaptations, is that nose. They can smell for miles away. And that big sniffer is one that, of course, is where we can see those valley fever spores enter the body. That coccidiomycosis can enter the body through the nasal passage into the lungs and then sporulate. So are these guys on any sort of valley fever?
No, so Ronan and Finley don't have valley fever. One thing we watch for with these guys and we vaccinate them for, though, is West Nile.
West Nile.
Finley has had West Nile, and we've been able to treat it. But so every year when they get their vaccinations, we make sure to give them that West Nile, this species.
And when we do their physicals and when we draw blood, I mean, when we have them under anesthesia, we check them kind of snout to tail, and blood is definitely one of the things we're going to obtain just to get an overall assessment on their internal organs. But we would also test to see if they, again, have West Nile or valley fever. I don't know if you guys saw that Finley right there just kind of creeped down behind Ronan, very sneaky. She saw something in the water, and Ronan is much larger, so he has the chance of displacing her from food. But she was just pretty sly right there and just sneaking right in behind him, and he didn't even notice. So that's what I'm talking about. This is the intelligence. They definitely know what's going on. Hopefully you guys, I don't know, did you see that on camera there, Emily?
Yeah, that was really
okay,
neat.
Good.
And it's fun to see her in the water as well, because you don't see that too often.
Yeah, she'll kind of stay in the more shallow. I've never seen Finley actually swim.
So she won't swim. She doesn't like the deep pool. The kind of little platform that juts out here by the stream, she'll sit on that and kind of lay on that. The kind of low end, but from the stream to the underwater viewing den, she'll go in that. Ronan, if you see a bear fully swimming in the pool, he is your bear. He's definitely our water bear and our swimmer of the two.
And again, you guys can always keep an eye on our bears in both habitats because we have webcams on our pool side and on our mulch side. So you guys can always keep an eye on them. Now, I know I get a lot of questions on the webcams, and especially in the early morning, some of the views on the pool side can be challenging because the sun's coming up and it's hitting that dome. And so it kind of creates a little blur. And then as the sun's going down for the mulch side, it hits that camera. So just be aware if you are early morning as sun's coming up or sun's going down, you know, those sides may be a little altered in your view. But if I see the bear, if I see Ronan swimming, I always try to turn the camera on it. So hopefully whoever's on might get an opportunity to see him too, because I think it's really cool. I mean, the polar bears, they swam all the time. The grizzly bears, I think Ronan, is he in there probably every day?
At least once a day. He'll sit in the stream at least once a day. He does a big swim every day, if not every other day.
Yeah, which is pretty cool to be able to see him. It's a large animal to be able to, and you know, they're not the most graceful, but it's still pretty cool to be able to see him in the water. You have any other questions, Emily?
Yes, since we have Kelly with us, one of our viewers wants to know, we know that the elephants have really close relationships with their trainers, and we've seen that in our previous chat. What is a example of the closeness between Keeper Kelly and our Grizzlies?
So these guys with us, we build our relationship with them. I am with these guys 5 days a week. So they kind of trust me. And we do a lot. I do their vaccines. So I do all the training to get them lined up in our corridor. So we can just do voluntary vaccines on them. They stand there, they know they're gonna get poked. We kind of practice with a stick and some blunt needles, but it doesn't feel great to get a vaccine, as most people know when you get flu shot or anything like that. So they're trusting me that they're gonna get good snacks and that they're gonna be taken care of, even though they're getting that kind of negative vaccine, but they trust me and they're getting the goodies for it.
And again, that trust is built up over days and weeks and months and years. And we try to think of a bank account. So think about your bank account, and it's a relationship bank account. So what Kelly does is makes a lot of positive deposits with the animals every single day. And then that vaccine is a withdrawal. And if you don't do all those positive deposits, when you do that one withdrawal, you can bankrupt your relationship account. And so it's important that every day she's building that. And to me, the sign of a good relationship is that when that keeper is there, the animals want to come to them. They're interested in what they have. They want to see them. They want to participate. If I was to go back and I had some food, they might come to me and I might be able to feed them. But if I was to ask them to put it into, you know, a potentially vulnerable position, like put their back to me, which was what they don't want to do unless they really trust you, they probably would not do that because they don't have that trust built up with me. I mean, they'd probably sit there and take some food for me, but they are not going to do the behaviors that Kelly has them trained to do. And again, that's all that relationship trust that's built up.
That's really awesome. I have a couple of questions about size of bears. What is the largest living bear species? And then how does the size of grizzly bears compare to our native black bears?
So black bears are significantly smaller than grizzly bears. Black bears probably around 200, 300 pounds. So grizzly bears, you know, double that weight for the males and the females. And the lower 48 brown bears, again, they're grizzly bears, are going to be smaller than those Alaskan Kodiak bears. The Kodiak bears can get upwards of 1,100 pounds. I saw a record of 1,500. I'm not sure about that, but 1,100 to 1,200 pounds is probably not unheard of for a large Kodiak male. It goes back and forth with the 8 species of bears which one is the largest between the polar bear and the Kodiak bear. Again, it depends on what you're looking at, what scientists, has encountered that giant polar bear that says it was the largest, to whether or not it's the Kodiak or the polar bear. I tend to think the polar bear, and they can range, on average, heavier, somewhere between about 1,200, 1,400 pounds. But that's not to say that, an individual Kodiak is going to be, larger than the individual polar bear. But I think on average, the male polar bears are going to be larger than the male Kodiaks. But you're still looking at a real big bear. I mean, that's Ronan standing up in the back, and this is smaller brown bear than our Kodiaks. So those Kodiak bears, they stand 10 feet tall. I mean, think about a basketball hoop. I mean, they're just massive. They're 10 feet tall at their head. Just a massive animal. So I don't know. I'd say polar bear or Kodiak. I mean, it goes back and forth.
Awesome. Thank you, Jed. How long do the Grizzlies' claws get? I mean, we can kind of see them pretty well on camera, so they must be pretty sizable.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see Ronan's, and Kelly, you might have a better answer at how long their claws are here.
They're about the size, they're like 3 to 4 inches long, especially on Ronan. His are a little bit longer than Finley's. We're working on training them to do nail trims, but their nails are at a good length for them right now, and they wear them down. We give them a lot of digging enrichment and shredding logs, so they wear their nails down so we don't have to trim them right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're a great tool for the Bears, and Ronan's kind of coming up right here to say hi to you guys. There we go. So you can get a good look at those claws right there. Again, they'll use them to open up logs. They'll use them to strip flesh off of a prey animal they've captured. It's definitely a good weapon for them. They'll also use them to kind of pick berries and fruits off of plants, and you can see that with some of the enrichment that Kelly has put some produce into, challenges. So over here, let's see if I can turn that over. Yeah, there we go. Let's see if it'll stay there. That fire hose right there has got some fruits and vegetables kind of embedded in it. And so he'll use his teeth and his claws to kind of pop those goodies out of there.
As brother and sister, do they get along pretty well?
They definitely are brother and sister. Ronan is our dominant bear. So he is in charge, and what he wants, he normally gets. Finley is very, if Ronan has something she wants, she's very vocal about it. She'll sometimes start a little bit of a tiff between them. She'll vocalize at him. And sometimes Ronan normally puts an end to it, but then you'll have Ronan the other day, Finley walked past and he just bit her on the butt for no reason. So they're just kind of brother and sister, and they'll play together and sleep together. When they hibernate, we always see them. They share the same nest. They spend a lot of time together. When they first got here, Finley was a little skittish, and Ronan was very protective over her, standing in front of her, trying to protect her. So they're very closely bonded.
Siblings. I've got a brother and a sister. I know exactly how that goes. And I was the youngest, so I have an older brother. I know what older brothers do. Even though they're the same age, they're from the same litter.
We're able to see their long front claws. Do they have the same length claws on their back feet?
No, they have smaller claws on their back feet. So those front ones are definitely going to be longer. Again, they're usually front pod animals for manipulation. So they don't have quite as long on the back feet. So you'll see those long claws on the front, not on the back. And I saw somebody said, aren't bears typically solitary? It kind of depends. We will see bears hang out together. And unfortunately, because their habitat has been defragmented, that a lot of those bears are being forced to be in closer contact. And as long as the bears have the resources that they need, you don't see disagreements happen in the wild also. But there is a hierarchy. you know, on a lot of those rivers where those salmon are jumping up, you'll see a hierarchy of the most dominant bears. They have the prominent spots, and then the lower in the food chain there will have, you know, to wait to the very end, or get an area that maybe you don't catch the salmon quite as easy. So they will hang out with each other. They don't necessarily live with each other, but they will hang out with each other. And again, a lot of that is due to resources. And so we obviously are going to give these guys all the resources they need. Finley's she did a bear scratch there, and now coming up to check you guys out. So yeah, they do well here. I mean, they might have little disagreements, but the majority of time, you know, they do really well.
And I think we just have one more question. You had mentioned that to kind of keep their nails at the right length, we offer them things to shred and logs to kind of dig into. People might know about bears kind of scratching on trees in the wild. Is that what the same behavior that our grizzlies are displaying at the zoo?
So in the wild, these guys are going to be shredding logs. They're going to be digging, looking for grubs, looking for any kind of food item. You can see Finley, she's scratching right now on the rock work. So when these guys are shedding their winter coat, you're going to see a lot of that. So Ronan will sit in the stream and get wet, and then he'll rub on the rock work, scratch on our platforms and all of our logs, trying to get that hair off. But for the most part, when they are shredding and digging, they're looking for grubs, tubers, roots in the wild, and we just try and do that natural behavior with some of our enrichment.
So with that, guys, we just want to thank you guys for spending a little bit of time with myself and Kelly here at our Grizzly Bears. It's a treat that we got one of our zookeepers out here to answer some of your questions even better than I would be able to. They know these animals better than me. So again, just want to thank you guys for hanging out with us on this Wednesday morning. Again, next Wednesday, we'll get that animal out there, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the giraffe. Thank you guys for everything that you guys are doing, the support you guys have given us all through these last 5 months, and every time that you guys have been to the zoo and been a part of, you know, what we're doing here. So we just want to thank you guys for all that. And with that, we will say goodbye and stay safe out there, Tucson.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jed and Kelly.